with you between the lines, which did, like, I did write that pretty quickly, and the process went pretty quickly. Like, there were definitely like mental breakdowns I would have like on a weekly basis. Like, I had no idea. I think the challenge with this book is that I knew the characters really well, but I didn't know the plot. And I think especially since my background is in poetry and not fiction, like, I didn't even have the tools to think of a plot. I'm like, what do you mean a plot? Like, I'm just here for the vibes. And so I just like I was like, what are you talking about?
Hello, and welcome to So I Wrote a Book, Now What? Where writers chat about writing. I'm so excited to introduce my guest today. My guest today is Katie Naymon, who wrote You Between the Lines. Dun, dun, dun. It's a Book of the Month Club pick. And honestly, it was the best book I read all last year. And I read a lot of books last year. But you know, when you read a book and it just like kind of reaches into your soul a little bit and won't let go, that's what this book was for me. And I haven't read a book like that since, I don't know, Beach Read, honestly, or One Night on the Island. Both of those books I've read 10 billion times and I love them. But this is my new beach read, basically. I love it so much. We had a great talk about her whole writing process and her publishing journey, and I'm so excited to share it with you all. Katie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. What a delight. I'm so excited to talk about writing with someone. I never get this opportunity, so it's fun.
Right. People in normal life don't care.
They really don't. And I mean, but that's a good thing. Like, I don't want too many people in my life to care. Like, the lower the stakes, the better. So I'm like glad that I don't have to talk about
that's
this.
fair.
I'm excited.
What made you decide to write a book?
Yeah, it's not something that I like ever thought I would do, honestly. Like, I mean, I've always been like a writer. I've never done anything else professionally. I've always been like a full-time either journalist or copywriter. So I've always been like writing. And then in school, like, I majored in creative writing, and then I have my master's in creative writing, but I always like was more on the poetry track. So I genuinely never thought I would write a book. But I think, like, probably a lot of these stories, it all like starts with some like shakeup in your life. And I basically, in 2022, I was laid off from a job that I liked. It wasn't like a dream job or anything, but it was just kind of like oh my God, like, this kind of thing, like, this just isn't the kind of thing that I ever thought would happen to me, especially because I'm so careful, and I'm so like, I just try to do everything perfectly. And so when something bad just like happened, I was like, what? Like, how can this be? And so I was kind of like jostled out of my routine, and both like had to find another job, obviously, but then also was just kind of like in a period where I was like seeking comfort. And I had a lot of time all of a sudden. And so I just started reading like a ton of romance novels. And I hadn't really done it in the past. I had always read romance like in fan fiction, like up until like from age 11, 12. Like, fan fiction, I absolutely should not have been reading at that age, like wildly inappropriate, like filthy, like 100%. Like, the parental control on my parents' desktop did not work, like, just completely inappropriate. And so I just feel like I've always been reading that, but I had never really picked up a romance novel, and not because I thought like I was too like good for it or like too intellectual. I wasn't reading anything, frankly. Like, I wasn't picking up books for pleasure. I don't know why. I just didn't, for a very long time, even though I used to be that kind of kid. And so after I just started reading like a ton of romance novels and I had a lot of time, I had no job. I was reading like 3 to 4 books a week. I was just obsessed, like absolutely insatiable, could not get enough. And after maybe like 2 months of this, I was kind of like, you know what if I wrote one? Like, I should try this. Like, this is so fun. Like, I bet I can do it. So I was just kind of like, okay, like, let's just write one. And so that's what I did. I just wrote the book. and that ended up being like my debut book. So it's
That's
very,
insane.
I mean, it frankly is insane. Like, I don't know how it happened. Like, I don't know, but it happened. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's that.
So did you plot out the book before you started writing it, or did you just sit down and write it out?
I didn't. I'm very much not a plotter, but I can't go off nothing. The thing that I did before you between the lines, and what I think I will probably do for every subsequent book, is I always write like the back of the book blurb, like the description, like the marketing copy. Like I need that first. I need something to go off of. I like wrote that, and then I was kind of like, once I felt happy that I had like a rough idea of the characters, like a rough idea of what the like inciting incident could be and the stakes, then it's just like, okay, let's just like write something. Let's just like try to find the way into the book. I never really did an outline. I mean, I both basically what I did is like I tried to like deconstruct books that I already was reading and liked and try to
Mm-hmm.
like I was familiar kind of with beat sheets, and I had read at least I didn't like read the book, but I read like articles about like romancing the beat, that book.
Mm-hmm.
um and so I like kind of had a sense of like the structure, but I never like sat down and was like, and this is the grand gesture and this is the no way number two, or like any of those. Like
Right.
I really was just kind of like, let me deconstruct a romance novel, and then like how would mine fit into that. So yeah, not like a
Yeah.
little structured, but not so structured.
Once you had a first draft of it, where did you go from there?
I mean, my goal for the beginning was like, let's just get 60,000 words done. Like, let's just do some sort of skeleton draft where there's like big swaths of like just nothing. Like, I knew there would have to be something there, but I had no idea what it could be. So I just tried to get 60K done, and then I like printed it all out. You know, I got it like bound, and I tried to like just go through it and be like, how, like, what do I do next? And that's kind of when I brought in like initial readers to help me essentially, since I had never written a book before. Um, and I feel like, yeah, I just tried to do the skeleton and then would move on from there. But yeah,
Where did you find your initial readers?
it's all people that, or just all my friends. I have a master's degree in creative writing, in poetry specifically, but I know people in fiction as well, who are also my friends. And so I gave a draft to one of my classmates, one of my former classmates. I gave a draft to my friend who introduced me to romance, really, who she worked in writing. She was like a journalist, but had never written her own book or anything like that. But just like people who were familiar with books, familiar with writing, and had an interest. And I just like had them read it and worked from there.
What was their feedback like? Were they all on the same page, basically, or was it all over the place?
No, I mean, I feel like I had probably over the course of like my before querying, like just of people reading the various drafts, I think I maybe had like 7 or 8 people read some, like at least one draft. And there was like a big spectrum. You know, some people I really knew they were just there for hype. Like it would just be like my best friend. Like I knew that she like wasn't going to give me like a developmental like edit letter, and I didn't want it from her. You know what I mean? Like I wanted the hype. I wanted like something
Yeah,
to live for.
totally.
um, and so I feel like from her, like I would only get back like, you know, oh my God, or just like kind of comments, or, you know, maybe she would say like, oh, I didn't get that. Like I would get some sort of feedback, but it wasn't like particular. It wasn't the feedback you'd maybe get from like a critique partner or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then on the other end of the spectrum, I had some people who really like, I had a friend who did write me like an edit letter. And gave like a lot of like big picture kind of stuff. And then I just kind of like chose whatever I felt resonated, whatever feedback felt right, just on like a gut instinct, and then like ignored the rest, basically.
Mm-hmm. I'm so interested because I read an arc of your debut and I loved it
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so
And
much.
I loved it so much that I've read the acknowledgments several times as
Oh,
well because
yeah.
I'm such a nerd. And in it, it says you thank somebody. I don't remember who exactly, but you thank somebody for not turning it into a dual timeline mess or something
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. And I'm like,
Yeah,
what was it? So was
yeah,
there a
yeah.
version of the book where it goes into like dual timeline with like their high school times or something?
I, not quite. Like, so that was my MFA classmate who, like, she had only ever, like, she is not a romance girl. She's not even a commercial fiction girl. Like, she's a lit fic girl. And so I feel like giving this to her was already like a stretch because I feel like, she just didn't get, like, kind of the beats of romance. Like, she doesn't know any of that. But she does know, she does know a lot though. And so I feel like at the time when I was still trying to figure out what the book was, it wasn't even that it was like two people set in an MFA program. It was just like two people who knew each other from high school, basically. And I didn't know kind of like further what the environment was yet. And I think I wanted like this big dual, like I wanted this big sweeping dual timeline thing. Um, but I was still kind of struggling, like, but what's in the dual timeline? Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you've read the book, and I guess I shouldn't talk too much about the book. Like, there's like one chapter that's from a different timeline. Like,
Mm-hmm.
in the original conception of the book, it kind of was like, well, what if I had like a bunch of those chapters like leading up to this moment? But then my friend was kind of like, but what would you even put in them? Like, what would be interesting even for someone to read about? Like, just cut all of that. Like, you clearly don't have a plot. And I was like, oh yeah, like maybe true. Like maybe I don't. And so then I was just like, okay, like you're right. Let's not do that. So that was good.
That's amazing. I did think that the one that goes back was a really brave choice. I feel like in your debut,
Thank
you
you.
made a lot of really brave choices
Oh God.
where,
Do you think?
and in the most amazing way. It sounds bad
Okay.
because, like, being brave sounds bad.
Brave.
But no, in like the most amazing way.
Oh, thank
Because a
you.
lot of times, like, I've written books about writers,
Mm.
and a lot of feedback I've gotten is like, oh, we don't need to see their actual writing on the page. We don't need any of that.
Yeah.
So when I
Yeah.
first started reading yours and I read the blurb and I was like, oh, they're like poetry MFA students. Are we going to
Yeah.
get to read poetry? And I was really
Yes.
excited. And like, I didn't know because a lot of times if they're writers in the book, you don't ever see the writing in the page, but you did in
Yeah.
this one. And it was so satisfying. I finally
Thank
got to read
you.
someone's writing on the page and it was
Thank you.
wonderful poetry, like really, truly amazing.
Oh,
But it was
thank
a
you so
brave
much.
choice. Did you ever get feedback to not include that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, not feedback that I ever took seriously, but 100%. I mean, I had agents who were like, "This is too in the weeds. Like, this is too much about the academics." And then people on sub would be like, they'd be like, "I love the writing, but I don't want a book that's writers writing about writing. Like, it's dull."
Ugh,
And I'm like, "Okay, like you don't get
they're
it. Like
wrong.
that's fine." Yeah, they're like, and that's fine. Like you 100% don't have to like it or get it, but I feel really confident that like some people will get it, and that's the kind of book that like I want to read. Like I get off on the weeds. Like I love
Mhm.
like inside baseball. Like I want like the most granular kind of stuff. And so I was just like, whatever, like this is what I'm going to do. But I think a lot of people did end up getting it, but 100%, like I know that this is going to be too much for some people and will be seen as boring or whatever, and yeah, just like too slow in that regard. But the people who get it. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you
And
get it.
it's so amazing. I love it.
Oh, thank
I can't
you.
wait
Thank
for
you
it to
so
come
much.
out to buy like the physical copy for like the
Oh,
trophy for my
same.
shelf.
I'm also excited to buy a physical copy. It's very exciting.
I bet. So how did you get your agent once you were like ready to query the book and you've taken the feedback? How many drafts did it go through before you decided it was ready to query?
It's hard to know drafts wise because I feel like I tinkered a little bit in between, but maybe it was like 5 drafts, and different versions. One draft was like going from 60K words to 80. Maybe one draft at the end was literally just like a rinse edit, like kind of looking for like just more on like a line level. But I think maybe like 5 or so drafts. And at that point, I feel like I had always read the advice that was like, take it as far as you can like take it. When you're no like forget about like when you're in a place where you're just changing a word here and there, but you're not actually making like major edits. Like that's like a good indication that like it's none of your business anymore. Like you need to like set it out into the world. And so then at that point, I was like, okay, let's query it. And so I really knew like I didn't know any authors. Like I feel like what I've been struck by in this kind of like debut year is so many of my peers like they already have these like robust writer communities from like pitch wars or from just like Twitter, just like meeting people. And I was shook by that when I came in. I was like, what? Like, how do you know these people? Like it didn't even occur to me to like look for this. And so like everything I learned about querying was very much like self-taught. So I listened to probably 80 episodes of like the shit no one tells you about writing, which I love. And I know that you've seen too, because I feel like I heard that
Oh, yes.
on the last episode or the last episode of this.
I'm a huge fan.
It's so good. It's so good. And
It
it's really inside baseball. It's really detailed.
Mhm.
And I love how they dissect the query letters. So I listened to like 80 of those episodes and then like a million other episodes of like other similar kind of like writer podcasts. I probably read all of the like how I found my agent blog posts on like the first 30 pages of Google. Like I was just like voracious. Like how do I get as much information about this as possible, just to like create a strategy basically, because I didn't know, like I didn't have anyone to ask. I didn't know anyone who had like done this, and so I just was like, okay, I'm going to teach myself everything about this. And so then I just made a strategy. I made a big spreadsheet, like kind of chose what I hoped was very careful, like which agent per agency. But of course, like you only know so much. Like a lot of it's just like guessing. And so I just kind of like started after doing a lot of that like prep. And so once I kind of got it in motion, it just flowed. And then luckily for me, it was pretty fast. Thank God, because I still made it agonizing, even if it was fast. And I had a couple options to pick from, and I went with someone. My agent is Hannah Mann at Writer's House, and she is lovely. And I ultimately just wanted someone that I had good chemistry with, like personally, someone who I felt really got the book the way that I get the book.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was really important to like ask what their visions for the book would be, like what their editorial vision was in like changing the book, how long they thought the edits would take, since I had like a really big spectrum of answers for that question. And so I just went with Hannah, and I've been very happy ever since. So
Nice.
it was good.
Were the edits with her very extensive?
They were not super extensive. I would say nothing major changed in the structure of the book. There was there was one plot point added that I did not think of in the past. Definitely cannot mention it because it's very spoilery. But I can tell you later.
Tell me
But there's
later.
like one thing that was changed, but for the most part, it was just kind of like, how do we, dial up certain things in the drafts? Like, how do you just make the character a little bit more consistent here? Or how do you, just kind of like tone down things, dial up things, just like little tweaks here and there. We did that for about a month, but it was very, I mean, I had like a really, because I asked all the different agents, like what do you propose? And one agent told me like, oh, I want to do 6 months of edits on this. I'm like, oh,
Ooh.
okay. And then another agent told me I want to go out with it next week, and that freaked me out
Ooh.
just as much. I was like, no,
Yes.
like I don't think so. Like I don't feel that confident. Like, and so ultimately I went with someone in the middle. Like let's do like a hearty like round, but then let's get out, because I appreciate efficiency. Like I really, like I don't want to go too in the weeds. I feel like because with every edit, like in some way, I feel like can build depth, but I also think that like it can make something overwrought, or it can start like
Mm-hmm.
it starts becoming like what someone else wanted instead of like what I wanted, and then maybe
Mm-hmm.
some of the magic is taken away almost. So it's really tricky. It's really, yeah, it's tough.
Hmm. I'm so glad you found an agent that shared the same vision as you.
Me
And like
too.
not somebody that wanted to change it into something else. Because clearly the 6 month person must have wanted big changes.
I think it was like kind of big changes, but also kind of like her. Like I think she also just was kind of like a more methodical, like slower, like less like just like a highly editorial agent. And I think like there's such different philosophies. Like I think some agents are really like, how do we shape this into like the minimum viable product to send? Like what is the least amount we can do to make it sellable? And I think others are like, I want to put my own like, fingerprint on this kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just kind of like a style, not necessarily like an indication that she thought it needed some drastic overhaul. I don't think any agent would really sign you if they thought it was like so much work, because obviously it's like it's a lot of work that's unpaid until they sell it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, everyone has a very different style, so it's useful to like do that kind of like agent interview and try to glean as much as you can get from that.
Yeah. And what was your submission process like?
The submission process was exactly the same as the querying process in that it was short but agonizing. Like basically, like if there is a way to make something terrible and painful, I'll take it every time. I love misery. And so I feel like it was just I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky and I'm very aware that it went really, really quickly and smoothly. But it still obviously like comes with plenty of rejection from plenty of people. And I think one thing, in the same way that I read so many of those like how I got my agent blog posts. Once I was on sub, I did the exact same thing with like how I got my book deal, and I wanted all of the information. I wanted to know like the dates people like submitted and the dates they heard back and all of this stuff. And I spent so much time like looking at that, and I was obsessive in like a bad way, I would say. I mean, I was like looking at, I think like a day after we went on sub, I started getting like hits on my website. And I didn't even have an author website at that point. It was just kind of like my day job, like copywriter website. I started getting like hits in New York. And I was like taking those IP addresses and like putting them into like a locator and being like to my husband, I was like, look, this is 2 blocks from Simon and Schuster. What does this mean? And I feel like, but it's so ridiculous. And I really, and I say this now as in like I like wouldn't do this. Like I wouldn't do this, and that's why I feel like I've made kind of a decision. Like I would never write like a how I got my agent post or a how I got my editor. And I don't think giving granular level detail actually does that much good, because in some ways I think it's useful to know that everyone's experience is so different. But once you know that, I don't think there's very much more to be gleaned. Like I think people, like I was like looking for patterns. I was looking for like any possible indication, like this is how my submission process will go because of like these posts. But like none of that is actually useful, and I think it was like just incredibly distracting. So like I would actually recommend like not doing any of that and just like go outside, touch grass, like talk to people who like don't care about this at all, because like that's a like I cannot overstate the amount of time I spent like thinking about this. And I don't think definitely did not calm me down. So I feel like I would recommend not doing that personally.
Yeah. And when you got your offer, then was it a pretty quick process from there?
Yeah, it was. I mean, so it was a preempt, and so they and that was another
What does
thing
that
that
mean?
I it means that they basically put an offer on the table and they give it like a ticking time bomb. Like it's basically like a you have to accept this and you like it's they want it that badly that like, it'll be like you have 48 hours to decide or it's off the
Oh, that's
table. Um
intense.
it's very intense, and that was very stressful. But yeah, so I'm very happy with how it happened, but it was a stressful time. And Yeah, it was one of those things where like I feel like a lot of people talk about like oh I knew I got to second reads, or I knew it like was is being taken to acquisitions, and I didn't get any of that information. And not just because it's not that my agent was hiding it from me, it's just that neither of us got it. We just got an offer email like one day, and I was like, what? Like I didn't even know, like I knew nothing. And that's why I feel like some of these like individual experience blog posts are not useful, because they would always say like, and now I know I'm going to second reads. And it's like, I didn't get any of that. Like I just woke up one day and had an offer email, and I had never heard from these people prior. Um, so yeah, it was wild for sure.
That is wild. It comes out February 18th, is that right?
Yes. Yes.
That's so exciting. Are you
Yes. I
working on
know.
anything new now?
Yeah, always working on stuff. I don't want to say too much, but yeah, I'm always on the romance game. And I think every book I write is going to be very. I hope it's going to be the things that like drew me to the genre in general, which is like I love a book with like high yearning, high sexual tension, high angst, and so I feel like my next book that I hope is my book too, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's something where when I was like in the process of it, I was like, oh, this makes book one's like angst level look like amateur hour. So I'm excited. I'm excited, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. I think more importantly, like what I'm actually working on is just kind of like enjoying the publishing journey as much as one can. And just yeah, like I feel like always looking to be like what's next. Like for me, isn't always like sustainable. So I also just kind of want to enjoy kind of like what is in the here and now. What am I doing now? And I think it's mostly just like prepping for pub day and getting excited about like doing some of the marketing and just like basking in the journey, because I feel like we it can be easy to like forget and only like look at the things that you're not getting or like whatever, and just kind of enjoy like what you have. And so I feel like that's what I'm working on right now. Like that's more the mental work that's happening behind the scenes. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. When your book is published, since you maybe have a tendency to pursue things that aren't like, how do I say this? You maybe have a tendency to obsess about things a little bit,
Yeah.
like with your rabbit holes on
Yes,
the
Nicole.
internet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you going to read your reviews?
I mean, yeah. No, I mean there was like I no, I know, and like huge mistake. Like I don't do it anymore now. At this point,
Oh, that's good.
I've blocked everything. Blocked NetGalley, blocked Goodreads. My husband has the accounts, and he will like if I'm reviewing an arc or if I want something from NetGalley, like he'll have the computer and I won't be able to see, and he will like do everything for me, because like I did read a couple reviews when it was first on NetGalley, and it's just like it's really amazing how they can all be good, but it's only the bad one that you remember at all. And I could probably recite like one of them line by line, because it made me so upset. And so I feel like now I know better, and I've like blocked it. I blocked it on my phone. I like set like a child lock kind of protection, where my husband has like the password, so I can't even like change it. And that's been really good, because I clearly cannot be left to my own devices. So I need boundaries in place, because it's very tempting. Because I think as writers, we're like hunting for dopamine. Like I just need like I want that validation so much, but like the brain, I just don't think we're built to process like it, and it's not helpful. Like I feel like the best way to like survive any of this is to just like filter out everything you can, and just like not focus on any of that. But of course, it's like an impossible task. And I think like anyone who says that they're not reading their reviews at least once is like probably lying. Like I feel like I cannot envision like being like that. At least like one quick peek. Like I feel like it's really human to just be really curious. But yeah, never again. That's a lesson I learned for sure.
That's good. It's a good lesson. In your writing, have you ever felt stuck? Like it seems like the first book came pretty quickly and like you had a lot of inspiration, but have you ever at any point in your writing process with this book or your current book felt stuck?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I mean, even with you between the lines, which did like I did write that pretty quickly, and the process went pretty quickly. Like there were definitely like mental breakdowns I would have like on a weekly basis. Like I have no idea. I think the challenge with this book is that I knew the characters really well, but I didn't know the plot. And I think especially since my background is in poetry and not fiction, like I didn't even have the tools to think of a plot. I'm like, what do you mean a plot? Like, I'm just here for the vibes. And so I just like I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I just want to watch them like do things like sexually. Like, I don't want to, like, whatever. And so I feel like that was really like stressful thinking of stuff. But I feel like the thing that was really helpful is like, I had to get in my head that like future Katie will figure it out. Like, it's not my problem. Like, future her will do it. And I feel like that has mostly been the case. Like anything can be edited in post, like you can always figure it out later. Because I think like if I slow down, it's over. Like I cannot
Mm-hmm.
ruminate on like if there's a plot point or there's like something I can't get. Um, like I just need to just move on. But that happened like a million times with this book, and then with like other books that I'm working on or have worked on. Like I just need I just need to assume that like I will eventually get there. And that was I feel like a really groundbreaking. That was like something that really helped me, and I think that was I learned that on a podcast. And I don't think she invented this, but I think she was the first one I heard it from. I listened to an interview with Rachel and Solomon, who's an author that I love her work. And I think she was saying in her drafting process, like, she is constantly just being like, insert funny thing here, and then just like moving on. And I like, it didn't even occur to me I could do that when I started. Like, I was like, I have to just kind of like write it. But once I got permission from her to do that, it like completely changed the game. Like, it was just kind of like add funny moment, like add cute saying, like add whatever, like, and I would just like move on. And that was like the most game changing thing. So yeah, I mean, I'm constantly stuck. I'm constantly in some kind of crisis, and so I feel like that, yeah, just like realizing that it's not my problem, like I'll figure it out, has been really like useful.
Yeah, I do a lot of the insert this here.
Yeah, it's so great. I feel like it's like really like, and it didn't occur to me, but I feel like it saves time. And yeah, because you always do think of it, right? Like at least at some point,
Hmm.
maybe like maybe not right away. Like I don't know. I find it helpful as well.
Hmm. You mentioned that you were reading a ton of romance books when you decided I can do this. Are there
Yeah.
any in particular that like sparked the desire to write, or was it just the sheer volume?
I think it was the volume, but I feel like, I mean, the thing that I remember the most, which is so funny to me, is that like I had only read at that point, like by when I started writing this book, like in 2022, the only romance I had read was Red, White, and Royal Blue, which I loved. And that was a book that like I read once and I immediately started over because I was like, this is so good. But for whatever reason, like that I think maybe that was like during the pandemic. Like I don't know, I was like not in the headspace. I just like I put it down and I didn't seek out other romances. It really was only until after this like I had been laid off from my job that I started reading other books. And I asked my friend for like a big list because she was like a real and is like a real romance junkie. So she gives me this big list, and like the first book that she puts on the list was Priest by Sierra Simone. And like, have you read that book?
No, but I'm going
It's
to.
it's it's delightful. It's so delicious. But the thing is, if you've read it, it is an insane recommendation to give to someone who like you don't know their taste at all. Like it is so it like beach read it is not. Like it is very like it's so I mean it's so hot, it's so good. But it's not the kind of book I would give to someone probably who like has never read a romance novel seriously before. It's like wading into the deep end right away. Um, and so I always make fun of her now. I was like, that's like one of the most nuts things you've ever done. But it paid off massively because I don't know, I just like I started like realizing what kinds of stuff I liked, and I was just really following her like curriculum, kind of. I read Priest. I read all of Emily Henry, of course. I read The Kiss Quotient, which I loved. I read 7 Days in June, also like huge inspiration, and I love that. And I just like started just reading basically everything, like anything, and I could get my hands on. And at the beginning, I mean, I'm based in Stockholm, and so I was trying to get books from the library, and they're like really here you can find like some like books romances in English, but there are limited, and they're kind of limited to like the very most popular ones. And so I kind of like once I felt like I exhausted like the Swedish library system collection of English romances, then I moved on to like eventually someone told me about Libby, which of course was also a game changer. And then I would just kind of like literally everything. Like I was reading like at an insane pace, like especially when I was unemployed. It was like a book a day almost, like just so many. And they all I take different things from each and every one. So yeah.
Do you have a job now, or are you a full-time writer?
I definitely have a job now. I definitely am not a full time writer. I wish, kind of. I don't know if I wish. I mean, some days I wish I could do that. Because like, why would I work and not write if I didn't have to? But no, in many ways, I do think like having like a financial source that's not intimately tied to like your identity and your passion, I think is like ultimately really healthy for me. Um, so I think it's a good thing. I'm glad that I have like a full time job, even though sometimes I wish I didn't. But my job is like as a writer, so I'm like a copywriter. So even I'm always like doing word things every day, which I think is good. So even on the days where I don't like write fiction, like I'm still using that muscle every day, which I think is good. I think some people like that could be exhausting to do like too much writing, but I do think for me, like I need to constantly use that part of my brain or it'll atrophy. So like I need that kind of thing. So yes, I do have a day job for sure, and
Yeah.
probably will forever. I feel like it's really I think it's really rare like to I don't think it's like the norm by any means to not. But yeah.
Yeah. Where do you find time to write then in your day? Are you a morning writer or a night writer? Or do you just sneak it in?
It's really tough. I mean, I feel like when I was writing You Between the Lines, I did get a job like after my layoff. I did find another job, but that job like amazingly was it was very low amount of work. And we were home a lot, and so I was able to like kind of use part of my 9 to 5 as like also writing hours. And in an ideal scenario, I would be able to do that now, but I can't because like in the same way that I'm not like a morning person nor a night person. Like I'm not like I hate everything. Like being awake, why like it's all terrible. So I feel like that I don't want to write at night. I don't want to write in the morning. Like I would love to just write between the hours of like I don't know 12 to 3 and then that's it. But I think now because I can't do that, I mostly, yeah, like at night if I have to, or on the weekend. Um, but it's tough. I'm trying to like figure out a new routine because what I had when I wrote You Between the Lines, I don't think I will ever get that again, and so I need to find a way to write in other like in another schedule. But yeah, but what do you
Mhm.
do? Like, what do other people do? I don't even know. Are you writing every day?
I I do write every day. My daughter is 4 now, but since she was a tiny baby, she woke up at 4 in the morning. And so
Okay,
now I'm just like ingrained to wake up at 4 in the morning, but she doesn't anymore, which gives me some
okay.
time to write without anybody there.
That's quite nice, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And your
But
brain is
it
like
is,
on at 4.
it is. I don't set an alarm. I just wake up. It's terrible. But I just use it because
Damn.
I'm like, it
Yeah,
is what it
yeah.
is. Because either that or I'm like laying in bed going, gosh, why can't I get back to sleep? And like doom scrolling.
Yeah,
Like just get up and
yeah.
write. Then I feel like
Good for
grateful for that
you.
time instead of like resentful for that time.
Yeah, yeah. But how many hours will you do? Like 4 to 6
Maybe
or
no, she still wakes up pretty early. So she usually wakes up around 5 or 5:30. So I usually get like
mm,
an hour and a half
well, that's
in,
good.
which is pretty good. Not too bad.
Nice.
What
Yeah.
program do you write in? Do you have a preferred program?
Yeah, yeah. Scrivener. I
Yes.
can't do anything else. I need to move things constantly. Like because I don't write scenes in order usually. I really need the ability to move things and right now I'm working in Microsoft Word because I'm like kind of working on my next book and we're like in a more we're like in more in a revision stage right now and so I can't move things in the same way and I'm having breakdowns like all the time now because it's like Microsoft Word is not doing precisely what I want it to do and I'm like losing my mind. So I love Scrivener. Do you use Scrivener as well?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, I
it's
do.
great.
But then it gets to that point where you like start sending it to beta readers and people and you get their
Yeah,
comments and it's a full living book. And
I
then
know.
I also have a meltdown because it's like I want to work in Scrivener. I don't want to work in this giant thing that won't load and it won't load in all these
I
places and
know.
I don't want to do it this way. So I've tried to like put things back in Scrivener, but then
I
it's just a
I do that.
mess.
I know, but I have done it. I do feel like it's kind of worth it for me. Like I yeah, unless you're at the very final stages, but like I'm really if I have to do like scene moving work, like if I'm dealing with like structural stuff, man, like I can like section breaks in Microsoft Word. I just want to die. Like I just cannot. Like
Yeah.
I'm literally I was like brought to almost tears like 48 hours ago over something like this. Like I just cannot deal with the formatting and I don't have the brain for it and I was like dying and making my husband like please fix this for me. So I yeah, I love Scrivener. Like it was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great money I ever spent for sure.
Totally. I think it's also really freeing where if it's like a massive thing, you can kind of talk yourself out of the edit that needs to happen because of all the
Mm,
work just that needs to be done to even do it. Where Scrivener, it's just
yes.
so easy. Like you just do it, and if you don't like it, then you just change it back.
Exactly. No, it's like a game changer for sure. Highly recommend everyone invest in that. Super nice.
As a copy editor, is it hard for you to have like a messy first draft on the line level, or are yours like pretty clean?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, they're pretty clean. Yeah, like they are pretty clean. And I feel like for me, especially since my background is in poetry, the the line level writing I think is the most exciting bit to me. Like I like it way better than like plot, ugh, stressful. Character, fun but also stressful. Like what I like the most is like how do I make pretty sentences? Like I just really love the line. That's where I feel like I thrive more. Which makes sense, like given that that's all that I have done really in the past. And so yeah, like I feel like but I, at the same time, like I'm also not the kind of person who like is like tinkering until the very last second. Like I mean, like I'm not like a crazy perfectionist. Like I'll be pretty satisfied to like leave something alone pretty quickly if it's good enough. But yeah, I do try to do more of that work like up front as opposed to like adding it in post. Like I don't see a scenario where I will like kind of just write like kind of like a rote very like basic sentence structure and then go back and fix it. Like I've never done that. It's like let's do the best most like kind of artistic, I mean whatever that section or whatever that sentence needs. Like I'm not like adding in lyricism for the hell of it. It's just kind of like
Hmm.
whatever is needed in that time. I will try to just like nail that right away, or at least be as happy as I can be right away. Because yeah, I that's just my issues are always later when it comes to like the plot. Like that's where I have a lot of problems.
Was it hard to write poetry as different people? Because in the book, there's some of Will's and there's also, some of the other characters. And
Mm,
is that hard to do? Or because their poetry was
yeah.
also very different.
Thank
So,
you. I'm glad you
yeah,
think that. I don't know if everyone does. But I think, yeah, no, it is hard. And I mean, luckily for me is that not all the poems, I would say over half of the poems that are in the book are from my master's thesis that I worked on in the MFA. So they were already kind of done. And so the one that the one poem that's from Will's perspective, like that's the one that had to have the most kind of doctoring up because obviously like it was just, yeah, it's not me who wrote it, so it's like I needed to kind of like edit it, but for the most part like not a ton. Like, I mean, yeah, I don't know, it is tricky. I think now if you were to tell me to write a poem from scratch in someone else's voice, I would find that difficult. But because I was more just like changing something that had already been written, it felt like doable.
mhm.
But yeah, for sure, that's like a tricky thing. And I, to be honest, I don't know if I fully nailed it. Like, I don't know if they feel completely different. But I'm glad that you think so. I think like the thing is that in an MFA program, like weirdly enough, so many of our poems do kind of start sounding the same. Like by the end of the program, like there really is like an MFA style. So in some ways, it's very realistic that they're kind of writing similarly because that's my experience of what happened. Like we were all using each other's techniques by the end. Um, but yeah, but thank you. I'm glad that it works.
Yeah, I thought it was different. Like, obviously, they have a similar background too, because they went to the same high school, they're from the same
Yes.
hometown, they're in the
Yeah.
same MFA program. But I really did feel like the voice sounded like Will and not like, what's her
Lee.
name again? Lee, that's right.
Lee. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good.
I
Yeah.
thought it
Yeah.
was
No,
really,
it's tricky. Oh,
but
thank
I
you.
also went down a rabbit hole in my brain of like, how would one of my characters, if they were a poet, write a poem? How would I do that?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think it was helpful that I had already had a lot of them written. There were a couple that I did write from scratch, like for the book, and they came like easier than I thought it would. But it's definitely like a different beast as opposed to just kind of like angling something differently as opposed to writing from scratch for sure.
That makes sense. Oh, I do have a question.
Yes.
So, your writing voice in the book is pretty strong. How did you develop that voice? Do you think it was through your poetry? Like, does your poetry have a similar voice to the tone of your book? Or, I mean, how did that come about? Did it just like from the get go, from your very first draft, is that was just your voice on the page? How'd that happen?
Yeah, I guess that's not like helpful, but like yes, I mean, I just feel like Lee came to me like the one thing I knew. I didn't know the plot, like I didn't know what was going to happen in this book, like I didn't know anything, but I did feel like I knew Lee. And I don't want to say Lee is me because she's not. She's way more delusional than I am. I would have known he was into me way earlier. But like for like the purposes of the book, like yeah, I feel like she is maybe what I was like 7 years ago or something. And so I feel like it's obviously easier. They say write what you know, and I did. Like I feel like it was easy to access her because we do have a lot in common, and so it was easy to like put that on the page. But I don't know. I just feel like even if she's not me, I know her. Like I just feel like I know her really intimately, and so it was easy to do for the most part. But in like other books I'm writing now, where I'm trying to like stay further away from someone who is like so obviously like has like what I mean? Like it's very silly when I'm like, it's not me, when it's like, oh, she's from Cleveland. She's a copywriter. She went to grad school in North Carolina for poetry. And I'm still telling my mom, like, this is definitely not about me. And it's not. Like it truly is not. Like my grad school experience was not like this. Like I don't have I don't have the same like character kind of like wounds that she has. Like she truly is different. But we do have a lot of like broad strokes in common for sure. But yeah, she felt really familiar to me, and so it was pretty easy to do. But I don't anticipate the same level of ease for other characters that I write like here on out for sure. So that's gonna be difficult.
How did you handle such a large cast? Because there is kind of like a found family, like ensemble cast
Mm,
in like the MFA program, which is another
mm.
thing that really drew me to the book. Because it's so hard to write, and I'm like, how is she gonna do this? And you handled
Well,
it so well. Was that
thank you.
challenging?
It was challenging, and I think, and I mean, the cast was even bigger. Like there were two characters who even got cut, like in when I after like I sold, like after I started working with Forever, like the cohort was reduced like even by two characters because I was really like in my real MFA we had like six poets and six fiction writers. So in the book I was like we have six and we have six, but then someone was like way too many, and so then I cut it to five and five. But I had even gotten advice like, can you do four and four? Like, can you cut it even further? But then I think like what I tried to do is to give each person like a thing, that way to make them kind of more instantly recognizable. Like this person is this guy, this girl is this girl, whatever. And you want to like be able to show each person's like depth on the page, but ultimately like when you have such a big cast, like, and of course, and they add to the found family aspect, but they're not necessarily going through their own journeys. So it's like you do like they do need to kind of service the plot in different ways. So any character who wasn't like in any way like servicing the plot, like they had to go. Um, and so that I feel like what I try to do is just like give everyone like kind of an instantly recognizable thing, and then each time when they're on the page, like try to hammer that thing home or try to just like I had to I think I didn't want to constantly be like Houston, the really tall guy. Like I didn't want to keep saying the really tall guy, but I feel like at some point, at least at the beginning, you kind of do need to like jog the person's memory of like this is that person, because it is such a big cast. And I think for some people maybe it is too many. I was going for realism, but yeah, I feel like it is tricky. But in my head, like I do have like kind of like I could probably give like a page worth of information of all of them, and maybe not all that information is like out like it's not in the book, but it was helpful to have at least a little something to go off of, but by no means they're as like flushed out as like the two love interests, of course, but I do have like a little bit more on each person, um, than what you see in the book.
Hmm. Well, I'm gonna reread it and watch for those. Because I, like, you did it so well, I didn't notice that, but I knew who each character was and they felt distinct to
Mm.
me as people.
Oh, thank you.
Um, so I think it must have worked.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's. I
You're
mean,
welcome.
it's very inspired by like my classmates at the MFA, and I think it will be very funny when they read this because I think no one is like a direct correlation. Like it's not like Houston is this person, but I think there are parts of people in like different blends, and yeah, it's very. I think there's a lot of Easter eggs for people who like know me in real life. But yeah, I feel like this is just kind of this is what an MFA program is about, and I feel like that's why I was so drawn to this environment because I think it's so rich with like different kinds of people. It's such like a like yeah, just like a very rich playground to be on. So it felt like perfect for a romance.
Hmm. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your writing process and your publishing journey. It's been so cool to hear about it all. And I was texting my friend before this. I was like, I'm so nervous because I love this book so much.
Oh, Nicole, that's so nice. No, but like I'm so nervous. Like I was like walking around today, like trying to like practice, and I was like making my husband read the questions last night. I was like, oh God, like because I've never done anything like this before. So thank you so much for having me. Such a delight. And thank you for reading the book. And it's so
I
nice
loved
when
it.
people. Oh, thank you. Like it's so nice when people get it, and especially when other writers get it. Like it's just so nice to to be able to talk about writing with other writers. I don't agree with the people who don't want to, too much like meta, too much writing. So I love talking about writing with writers. So thank you so much for having me. Such a delight.
Yeah, is there anything else that you want to share?
Not really. that's
Great.
that's it.
Well, I'll link all your stuff. And
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so exciting. Wild.
so that was my talk with Katie. Thanks for being a part of it. There were so many things that I took away from this conversation, coming at it from the perspective of a writer and having loved her book so much. It was really nice to have her say, plot, hard, characters, hard. But the vibes, that was what she got naturally, but she had to work at the rest of it because I don't know if you have read her book. If not, please read it when it comes out next week. But the whole thing is amazing. Characters, amazing. Plot, amazing. Vibes, exceptional. But it was nice to hear that that was a challenging thing for her because I feel like as writers, all of us excel at something, like something naturally we're inclined to, and then other parts of it are challenging. They're hard. Writing is hard. Writing a whole book is hard. And so it's just nice to hear from such an amazing writer that it's hard. So, what parts of the writing process are challenging for you, or do you feel like you just naturally like got that? I'd love to hear from you about it in the comments. And if you haven't already gotten this, it comes out next week, and You Between the Lines, it's amazing. I highly recommend it. I'll see you next time.